Hi, Judy from Bungalow Quilting and Yarn here, and I want to talk to you about how to make a mitered corner on a napkin. I have a new book coming out in a few months, and it does have a napkin project in it, and sometimes when you draw the pictures for the book, it can be a little bit confusing from the appearance of it as to what you're actually doing. So videos are a real good way to show these things and to help out. Now, I've got this really wonderful substantial piece of fabric here. It's from Paintbrush Studios. Try to find a piece of fabric that has got a little more substance to it. Linens are always a really nice choice, and a cotton that's quilt shop quality, that's a heavier piece, is a really good choice. Oftentimes have customers come in and they totally fall in love with a piece of fabric and they don't know what they're going to do with it. And I always try to suggest that they do a tablescaping project with it, because if you have napkins made out of some of your favorite fabrics, what could be better than pulling them out of the drawer every day and being able to see the fabric right then and there? The other thing too is that cloth napkins are green. We're all in a movement of being green and not using paper products and not throwing them away. And with a paper or with a cloth napkin, you can use it a couple of times. You can, if it's your napkin for the family, you just put it away and you remember whose napkin was whose, and you don't have to wash them every single time. Whereas with a paper napkin, you're just wiping your face one time and throwing it away. So it's a really good project to do with fabrics that you love. It's also a great gift for a wedding or any kind of gift. So we are going to talk about how to do those miters today. Okay, so let's talk about the sizing of these napkins. So I've got this really nice piece of fabric like we talked about before, and I've cut it into a square, and this square measures 22.5 inches. Now, because we are going to be allowing 1¼ inches bigger than our finished size along all edges, you're going to want to cut it 2.5 inches larger. So if you want an 18-inch finished napkin, you're going to cut it 20.5 inches. If you want a 20-inch finished napkin, you're going to cut it 22.5 inches, because we're adding a 1¼ here, 1¼ here, 1¼ here, and 1¼ up here. The math can be kind of complicated, but just remember it's 1¼ inches that you're adding to all the edges. You don't want it to be a rectangle, you want it to be a square, so you're doing it to every single side. It's kind of like calculating when you're doing a quilt block. You're always adding for that extra 1/4 inch. So my napkin right now that I've cut is 22.5 inches, and we're going to have it finish at 20 inches. Okay, so here we have the wrong side of the napkin, and we're going to actually measure in 1¼ inches from this side and 1¼ inch in from this side. It's really helpful if you have a square template like this to work with. It's very helpful. So I'm going to measure 1¼ inches, and I've got this little gauge tool. It's an old tool that have been used. These kind of little gauge markers have been used for years. They're just wonderful. So I'm going to measure my 1¼ inch, and I'm going to have my acrylic template up 1¼ inch away there, and I'm going to butt it up against this, so we're not quite there yet. So we have to put this 1¼ inch, so we need to move this here. Okay, so that's 1¼ inch here, and I'm going to go back and measure this yet again, and it is 1¼ inch there. So once I get it 1¼ inch from this side and 1¼ inch from this side, I'm going to draw a little corner marking. I'm just using a regular pen here. If that bothers you, you could use a marking pencil. That's going to wash out. It's going to be folded under anyway, so you're never going to see it. The ink probably won't bleed through to the other side, but like I said, if that bothers you, I would definitely use a marking pencil. So we're going to do this on all 4 sides. We're going to measure 1¼ inch in here, and I think I'm going to have to go a little further over this way, and 1¼ inch in here, and that's perfect. And then I'm going to mark once again, and we're going to do that on all 4 sides. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we need to make a 45-degree angle, and the angle line has to connect right here at the edge of that corner that we've drawn, and most quilting rulers will have a 45-degree angle on them. These are my fast to cut templates from C&T Publishing, and they have 2 45-degree angles on them, so it makes it super easy to line it up with the edge of the napkin and then also intersect with the very point of that corner that we drew, that little L shape. So we're going to put the 45-degree angle line on the edge of the napkin and make sure that it's connecting to that little L shape, the point of that, and we're gonna draw a line right across there, and this is gonna look like this, and we're gonna do that on all 4 corners. Okay, so we've made a mark on our little diagonal line that we did. We drew marks 1/4 of an inch away from the edge here and 1/4 of an inch away from the edge here, and we're gonna do that all the way around, okay? This was a mark here made in error, so just ignore that mark. But there's a mark in from here 1/4 of an inch, and you're going to fold your napkin right sides together and line up these edges so that they're perfectly straight. And then you're going to start sewing. You're going to put your needle down right on that 1/4 of an inch mark. Okay, you're going to have your needle down right on that 1/4 of an inch mark, and lower your pressure foot, and then 2 stitches. Oh, I'm going to make the stitch length better here. Okay, you're going to make a couple of stitches in, and then right away you're going to do a couple back stitches, but you don't go beyond that 1/4 of an inch mark. All right, so right off to the edge, you can back stitch maybe 1 stitch or so if you want to, and take it out, clip your threads, and then you're going to clip this corner off. All right, 1/4 of an inch. You're going to clip that corner off, and then you can clip this a little bit to get rid of some of the bulk in the corner. Then we're going to turn this right side out, and you're going to need to poke it with something that is maybe I'm going to use the end of my scissors, but I'm not going to say that I advocate doing that, because you want to be very careful if you do that you don't poke a hole. But you're going to need like a knitting needle or something to poke that corner out nice and sharp. All right, so you're going to do that on all 4 edges, on all 4 corners, right? Then you can go over to the sewing machine or the ironing board, and you can turn this under like this 1/4 of an inch and press all the way around. Now remember, you did this on all 4 corners, so now you're ready to press these edges under like this all the way around. And once we do that, we're going to come back to the sewing machine. Okay, now I'm going to show you how we're going to go all the way around and press this. So because we left that edge unsewn, that 1/4 inch edge unsewn, we've got a little gap there, we've got that little opening. And so that helps us to be able to turn that edge under. See that? Because then you're going to have it under exactly with no raw edge coming through there. Look how perfect that's going to be. Now, if you don't have a good grasp on what 1/4 of an inch is, if you've not been sewing for 40 some years like I have, you're going to have to measure 1/4 of an inch all the way around. But I'm just kind of eyeballing it here and doing 1/4 an inch all the way around. So this is where I'm going to show you how it really looks nice. See that edge is just perfect. There's no raw edge showing. You've got this nice miter so that it has a more substantial edge also to the napkin. The napkin's going to have a additional thickness on the edges of all the napkin other than just a little hem. And I think it'd be a really great idea if you were going to do this for a gathering, a shower, or something where you all made a themed napkin for the bride, and then she got to take them all home after she got done with the shower. So if you knew she was decorating in a particular color, everybody come with a napkin that's within that color range or in that color story, and then everybody gives the bride the napkin afterwards. Just some really good ideas for making napkins. Okay, so once you've got that all pinned, you're going to press. You're going to press all the way around. You should probably be using glass head pins so that they don't melt under the heat of your iron. And then after you've pressed it, you're going to go over to the sewing machine and you're going to sew that down. And we're going to show you how that should be sewn when I get back over to the machine. Okay, so we're back at the sewing machine, and I'm going to tell you, don't start sewing. Don't put your needle down right here in the corner, because these corners, you want to make it look effortless and uninterrupted. You want your seam to look uninterrupted around that corner. So start further back over here. So put your needle down, and you're going to put your needle down probably 1/8 of an inch or less. Now, away from the edge of that turned under edge. Now, what I always tell my little students, my 8 and 12-year-olds, when they come in to learn to sew and they're doing something like this, a rolled under hem like this, I always say to them, just along the edge of the cliff without falling off the cliff. You don't ever want your needle to go off the edge of that cliff, but you also want the needle, you want your stitching to be close to that edge. You want it to be nice and close to that edge, because if it's not, after repeated washings, that 1/4 inch that you've got turned under there is going to flip out and you're going to have an unfinished edge sticking out. So I'm going to start stitching, and I'm going to back stitch maybe 1 or 2 stitches, and that's all. And I'm going to stitch really close to my edge without falling off. I've just got a regular 1/4 inch foot. Now when I get to that seam line, when I get to where I made that seam, it's hard to see because this fabric is a busy print, but there's that seam that we made right there. That's where you're going to put your needle down, and that's where you're going to pivot. You're going to pivot exactly on that seam line. And then it's going to look very uninterrupted. And we're going to go all the way around, right on the edge without falling off the cliff. And like I said, that's important. It's an important skill to have. It's not an easy one. It is looking easier than it is. You just have to be very, very careful not to go off that edge. It's kind of like stitching in the ditch. I'm stitching all the way around. Now, I think it would be really nice if you were deciding to do these for someone that was getting married, or even not getting married, but to do a little monogram on the inside corner. You would need, if you did decide to do that, you would need stabilizer if you were going to have them embroidered. You could use one of those wash away stabilizers. But if you do machine embroidery by yourself, you could do it, or hire somebody to do it, or even do some hand lettering and have it look really old-fashioned. There's all kinds of different things that you could do to make this look really beautiful. And remember, we're going to be able to wash these over and over for years to come. We have napkins in our kitchen that we've had for probably 20 years that I made, and they're still holding up, and we still use them. I want to stay close to that edge without falling off. Now, the proper number of napkins to make for someone, I would never make fewer than 6. This would also be a really nice project if you were going to make somebody a picnic basket, to put maybe 4 napkins in there. I mean, you wouldn't really have to have that many more if you were putting them in a picnic basket, but it would be a really nice addition to putting a picnic basket together. Find some plastic plates that match the color scheme of the napkins. And you can see too how closely I've pinned. I've gotten really used to pinning closer together rather than further apart. It just makes your life so much easier if you've got your pins in there more frequently. Okay, we're coming up to the end, and then we're going to take a look and see how this looks. And we're going to give it another press too. We're going to give it another press with the iron. But I didn't get really aggressive with the pressing because of the pins. I'm going to give it another press. Now I'm going to trim this really close. Trim this thread off close, and then we're going to just backstitch 1 or 2 so there's not a big bunched up area on your napkin. Okay, so now we're going to look and see. Look at how perfect that looks on this side. Okay, you can't even really see the stitching. You've got a nice edge on there, a nice substantial edge, and you've got a beautiful napkin. And that's all there is to it.